Inshallah, we continue with the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah this week from verse number 178. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, prescribed for you is legal retribution, Qisas. We'll explain what that is. For the murdered. The free for the free, meaning the free person for the free person. The slave for the slave. And the female for the female. But whoever overlooks from his brother anything, then there should be a suitable follow-up and payment to him with good conduct. This is an alleviation from your Lord and a mercy. But whoever transgresses after that will have a painful punishment. And there is for you in legal retribution, Qisas, life. O you of understanding, that you may become righteous. So these verses will be discussing something called Qisas, or legal retribution. Qisas is, in other words, the punishment, legal ruling on the punishment for murder. When somebody kills somebody, in Islam, Islamic legal, in Islamic law, what is the punishment? This is the punishment of legal retribution. If somebody kills somebody, then the person, the family of the victim has a right to see the other person also executed. There's capital punishment. By the way, this is in Islamic law for Muslim societies. Obviously not applicable here and not implementable by individuals. This is state law. This is state law or Islamic criminal punishment, which is to be administered, implemented by a state in Muslim societies, not in a non-Muslim land. So this is, for us, it's academic discussion, but it's real because it's part of the Sharia, it's part of the Qur'an. So these verses will be discussing what is the retribution, what is the law or punishment for somebody who murders another person. And it's revealed that it's reported that these verses were revealed when the Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina. Very shortly thereafter, these are the verses that were revealed. Why? Because the Muslims set up a society. They became an autonomous society in Medina. So now you will get in Surah Al-Baqarah and later on, laws to do with the public, to do with public conduct, to do with criminal punishment, to do with transactions, etc. So all of this will come in. So in other words, we move on to legal commands or obligations now that the Muslims have a society in which they must set up their own laws and regulations. So this verse comes after the previous verse, which we discussed 2 weeks ago, before the break, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out that piety, bir, which is highest form of ihsan, to do good, piety is not that you turn to the east or the west. Allah said in the previous verse, piety is that you believe in Allah, you have firm faith in the angels, the book, the prophets, and that you feed the poor, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after discussing the definition, what is real piety, this verse now comes also in the same line of thought, that piety is not just individual ibadah either. Piety extends to how you deal with each other in society, how you treat the other person. Piety also extends to that. So this is very important. So it flows on from that. And this is one of the reasons why law is so important. Many people separate law from religion. Many people separate, even Muslims, they separate law from religion. This is why law is important, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants each Muslim to attain piety, to become people of bir, to become people of taqwa. How is this going to be achieved? Partly individually through our faith and practice, through our iman and our personal ibadah and practice, salah, our daily practices like salah, or giving in charity, or zakah, or hajj, umrah. All of these things will help increase our taqwa, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our iman will increase. But then there needs to be regulations for the community, for the society. I might be, or a person may be pious at home or in the masjid. What about outside? What about other people? How will they treat each other? Does there need to be some regulation there? Yes, piety is not just individual. Piety is there. Taqwa has to be as a communal thing, as a society, as a collective. So this is where the law is important, to maintain that peace, to maintain justice in communities. Without justice, you can't operate. If people are just killing each other wantonly, there's no law, there's no order. Will you be safe in your masajids? Will you be safe in your homes? No. So Islam wants to create the perfect condition, not perfect because the world is not perfect, but Islam wants to create the best possible conditions in society and community, which will allow society to meet and fulfill their true objectives, which is to be in ubudiyah, surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to live their life according to Islam, to work for the hereafter. That's the purpose of Muslims and collectively as Muslims. So Islamic law also creates that environment, and we'll go on to see how that is created. So one of the main problems facing any society is how to safeguard the lives of individual members of that community, of that society. How do we protect each other's lives? How do we make sure that our life is valued? Nobody can come and just take your life away. How do we do that? This is what this verse is about. So, Qisas means what most of the Mufassirin said. Qisas here is referring to equity, meaning the same, meaning equal. So the verse will open up with saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas. O you who believe, qisas has been ordained for you, kutiba. It's fard, it's obligatory. This qisas is obligatory. Not necessarily executing the murderer, because there's other options we'll come to see. But the laws contained within this verse, with its options of forgiveness or blood money, is obligatory. On who? The believers. And this is another important point to focus on, that there's no difference between this law to do with murder and salah, prayers or fasting. How does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduce fasting? Same expression, kutiba alaykumus siyam. Fasting has been written for you, kutiba. Meaning in Arabic, kutiba means something written down. Technically it means it's made obligatory. Because in those days when they wrote something down, it was usually on stone or leather, parchments or things where the writing will stay for a long time. So when they said write something down, it means to preserve it, to keep it for a long time. But it also means to make obligatory. It's incumbent, it's fard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made salah fard, fasting fard. Kutiba alaykumul as-siyam. Fasting has been made obligatory. Here, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumul qisas. Same word, same language. But we as Muslims, we have separated many of these individual fard from this fard. There's no difference between salah being fard on me and you and any other laws contained in the Qur'an. It's all the same. The laws to do with halal, haram, same. Laws to do with interest, forbidding interest. The laws to do with haram foods, interest, prohibition of murder. All of these other laws is the same. There's no difference. Just like salah is fard on us, it's fard on us to stay away from alcohol, to stay away from haram food, to stay away from usury, interest. It's all the same because it's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the same command. If you go to most people and say to them, salah is not fard, did you know that? prayer is not fard, or Ramadan, fasting in Ramadan is not fard. If you go to the average Muslim, he'll think you're crazy. He'll say, what are you talking about? This is kufr. Or he'll say, of course it's fard. We know that. Even a child knows to pray is fard. But when it comes to other laws in the Qur'an, in the Sharia, that's exactly how people treat it. People don't implement these laws, or laws of halal, haram, or laws of contract or inheritance. And yet nobody's bothered. You know, as a society in Muslim majority lands, many of the laws of Sharia are not implemented. Whether it's to do with economics or political structures, or to do with business, commerce, transactions, many of the laws of the Qur'an are simply ignored. They're not implemented. But nobody bats an eyelid. It doesn't concern most people. But it's the same obligation as praying 5 times a day. It's the same obligation as fasting for the month of Ramadan. It's the same obligation as Hajj and Zakah. There's no difference. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people who differentiate. أَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْدِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضِ. Do you believe in a part of the book and you disbelieve and reject the other part? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes these people and He warns them of a punishment for those who differentiate between one part of the book from another part. No, anywhere where it's come as a command, it's come as part of the law, it's all the same for us. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if it's come in a form that makes it obligatory, then it's obligatory. Regardless of what it's to do with. It may be to do with food, it may be to do with marriage, it may be to do with family, inheritance, it may be to do with, like here, criminal punishment. It could be to do with many different aspects of society. But it's all the same. There's no difference. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِصَاصُ فِي الْقَتْلِ الْحُرُّ بِالْحُرِّ وَالْعَبْدُ بِالْعَبْدِ وَالْأُنْثَى بِالْأُنْثَى. O you who have believed, prescribed for you is legal retribution for those murdered. The free for the free, the slave for the slave, and the female for the female. So Allah begins with يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah begins with this ayah before giving the command, calling those of you who have believed. Why? To bring the attention and to highlight or to alert you, believers, that an important command is coming. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, then listen up, pay attention, because Allah is about to tell you something very important. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kutiba alaykumul qisas. Legal retribution is prescribed for you, qisas. This verse, they said, was revealed to institute justice, because before Islam, what used to happen in that society in Arabia, in the days of ignorance before Islam, what used to happen is there were differences in people. Some tribes were seen as higher up than others. Some people were given more value than others. There was a hierarchy. The elite, the noble people, the rich, compared to the poor or the slaves or women and men, there wasn't equality. So what used to happen is one tribe, somebody from one tribe goes and kills or murders another person from another tribe. That tribe will turn around and say, the person you killed is worth 2 of your people. So we will come and revenge and kill 2 of your people. So instead of 1 person for 1 person, they would kill 2. Or they would say, you killed a slave, then, we're going to kill, a free man kills a slave. They say, no, you can't kill him because he's free and the other one is a slave. Etc., etc. Man kills a woman, woman kills a woman. They wouldn't allow equal justice to be meted out. They would have their own rules. Or sometimes this cycle will carry on. One person kills another, the other tribe comes and kills another 2 people. That tribe goes and kills 3 people. So this killing, bloodshed, revenge was carrying on as a cycle. Secondly, there was no equality, there's no equity, there's no justice. Right? Somebody kills somebody, instead of taking revenge on that person, they take it on the whole family, or they take it on his tribe. So there was no justice. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is limiting this by saying, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِصَاصُ فِي الْقَتْلَى الْحُرُّ بِالْحُرِّ. If a free man kills a free man, then however noble that free man is, he is liable for the death penalty. He's liable unless the other family forgives him. So it doesn't matter how high up they are, noble, rich, whatever, tribesman, leadership. If that person commits this crime, then he is liable for the same punishment. Same with the free man to a free man, a slave to a slave, a female to a female. If they are the killers, like a female kills a female, then the punishment is on that female, not on another male or not on somebody else. Same with the slave to a slave. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this in order to bring about justice, to make it equal. Why a lot of people have problems with these type of verses or this type of punishment? They think, qisas, a life for a life, a capital punishment. A lot of people think this is, astaghfirullah, backwards or harsh or barbaric. But in Islam, this isn't just a independent one rule. It's part of a whole system. The whole of Sharia, the Islamic legal system, has 5 universal objectives that protect 5 things. Amongst those 5 things, life, protection of nafs, life, is amongst one of the most important. Protection of nafs, life, is amongst one of the most important things. So the whole of Sharia, all of the laws in the Qur'an and the Sunnah, in the Islamic legal system, are there somehow to protect these 5 things. Life, protection of life, protection of religion, protection of intellect, aql, protection of lineage or biological identity, and the protection of property or wealth. These are the 5 things, overarching universal things, objectives of Sharia. Underneath those, because to protect those 5 things, there's many laws, many rules, right? So all of the ahkam, all of the rules to do with marriage, who you can marry, who you can't, how the marriage needs to be conducted, to make it legal, etc., etc. All of that is there to protect what? Lineage, biological identity, right? All of the laws to do with prohibition of intoxicants or intoxicating substances or alcohol, etc., etc., is there to protect what? The aql, the intellect, and so forth. So each one has many rules and regulations beneath it. That is why the punishment is so severe. The punishment is severe because to protect something which is very highly valued in Sharia. These 5 things, without these 5 things being protected, no society can really function. If all of these 5 things are destroyed and there's no protection in the law or in communities or in societies of these 5 things, society will destroy itself. Society cannot function properly. All the prohibition about stealing and taking other people's wealth is there. Why? To protect personal property. You have a right to own what you own. You have a right for that not to be taken by force by somebody else. So that's why the life is so valuable. It's one of the highest things in Sharia. Therefore, somebody who breaks that protection, somebody who takes a life and ignores this value in Sharia, then the deterrent is just as strong. So that's why it's there. People might say, why not just imprisonment for 7 years, 10 years? Why is it a life for a life? Well, because life is so valuable in Sharia, and also common sense. It makes sense. Many people say that, if somebody murders somebody else, what is the fair equal, just punishment. Most people, common sense, just without religion or anything, you know, if you've done that to that person, then you deserve the same. You deserve the same. So it's to bring about justice and equitable justice, equal justice. But that's just the first step. We'll come to, that's not the whole story. So this is firstly why the punishment is as harsh and as strong and as severe. It's not harsh in the negative sense. It's harsh and severe in the deterrent sense. So the reason why it's strong, because of the value Sharia puts on life. So this is very strong deterrent to prevent people from murdering and taking other people's lives. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but whoever overlooks from his brother anything, then there should be a suitable follow-up and payment to him with good conduct. This is an alleviation from your Lord and mercy. So look here, after saying كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِصَاصُ فِي الْقَتْلَ, after putting that standard, the first option is what? If somebody kills another person, in Islamic law, if somebody kills another person, that victim's family has the first option to demand the murderer or the killer to be executed. Like in many countries, there's capital punishment. That is the first option. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says what? فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the murderer the victim's brother. Whoever overlooks, but whoever overlooks from his brother, akhi. Imagine this, Allah is reminding you that yes, he's murdered your family member or brother or sister, whatever it is. But still, he's part of the Islamic brotherhood, ukhuwah. End of the day, he's still your brother. In Islam, he has rights over you, not here, but generally, he's still, even though he's killed one of your family members. But Allah is calling him brother, akhi, to invoke in you some sympathy, to have some leniency towards him, if you want to forgive him. Or if you want to, instead of having him executed, you take compensation as money, blood money. So these are the options. So Allah says, whoever overlooks from his brother anything, brother, he's calling the killer brother, overlooks anything from him, then there should be a suitable follow-up and payment to him with good conduct. Meaning, the killer or the murderer, if the victim's family forgives him and says, I'll take the compensation instead, the blood wit or the blood money instead, then they're allowed to do that. And this is encouraged. So if they agree to that, then Allah is saying the person who killed the murderer, the killer, should follow up quickly and make that payment with good conduct. Or take, both the family should take it also with good conduct. This is an alleviation from your Lord and mercy. ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. This is the emblematic characteristics of Sharia. That it is takhfif, it's light, it's a lightening of a type of burden. All the Sharia rules, it's easy, it's light, and it's rahmah, it's mercy. Because here, the murderer can still live. Even though Qisas is there. If the family want, they can have him executed. But if they forgive and take the money, compensation money, the murderer gets to live. That's takhfif. That's a lightening of the punishment. It's also a mercy. It's also a mercy. It's mercy and lightening in many ways, but here at least directly to the killer, to the murderer. There is a system here that prevents revenge. What happens? The killer, you forgive him, and then he pays you compensation. He pays you money. That's it. The feud is finished. Between this family and that family, the feud is finished. It's takhfif and rahmah. Why? Because there's no continuation of a cycle of violence. There's no continuation of revenge. There's no continuation of hatred. You wouldn't be able to forgive someone if you have, the highest level of hatred and wanting to revenge that person. No, because you've thought, okay, inshallah, I'll forgive him, I get my reward in the Day of Judgment, and I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive my sins. Then you become merciful towards that person. So in there is takhfif and rahmah. People understand this qisas. They think it's harsh, encourages revenge. No, but it's totally the opposite. The qisas is there as a deterrent, so that the one who is about to kill someone or has those kind of thoughts in their mind to murder someone, it's a deterrent to stop them, prevent them. So they think, if I'm going to murder this person, the first person to lose their life straight after is me. So number one, it's a deterrent. So the one thinking, it stops them. But also, it's not just a deterrent through the law. Islam and Islamic tarbiyah helps, because we also know that whoever kills a believer intentionally, his reward is what? The hellfire. And he should reside therein forever. So these verses, these punishment warnings will also help create in the mind of a believer that taking the life of somebody else is one of the worst things I could possibly do. And then on top of that, the law of retribution, qisas, is there to further remind you and strengthen that resolve in you, to deter you. Because for some people, the fear of hellfire doesn't work. It doesn't have any impact on them. So maybe the fear of losing their own life, that will impact on them. So it's a double protection to stop murder, to stop killing, to stop violence. And also takhfif and rahmah, because Ibn Abbas is reported to have said that this system of forgiveness and taking blood money instead of revenge or instead of execution of the murderer didn't exist in the previous Sharia. In the previous Sharia, it was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. It was, you had to kill that other person. The law or the court or the judge had to execute the other person. The murderer has no option. The only thing is capital punishment. This is in the previous Sharia. This is Ibn Abbas says. And also he says in some previous Sharia, there was no punishment. Or the people of the book made it as though there's no punishment for murder. Only some other type of punishment, but no murder. So he said Islam is in the balance, it's in the middle. It's not the person has to be killed, and it's not the person has to be forgiven. The option is there, it's in the middle. If the family, the victim's family want to forgive, they can. If they want to execute, they can. But it's encouraged to forgive, so the cycle of bloodshed and revenge stops. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنِ اعْتَدَى بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Meaning two ways. One is, if the victim's family forgives the other person or takes money from the murderer or the killer, and then later on takes revenge, on top of taking the money and compensation and forgiveness, then later on takes revenge, then this is a warning to those people. But whoever transgresses after that will have a painful punishment. This is also a warning too, if a person kills and murders and then he's forgiven or he's spared his life by compensation, but then he goes and commits another crime and kills somebody else, this is also a warning to that person that there's no second chance. Second time, it has to be execution. You won't get the chance of compensation. So this is again, this is to stop further transgression, to stop the further taking of life. And it's reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, I will not forgive a man who killed the killer after accepting blood wit or blood money. Meaning just what I described. After you accept the conversation, and then later, behind everyone's back, you go and kill that person, Prophet ﷺ says, this person, the Prophet ﷺ would not forgive. So this is something very severe. But again, as a reminder, this is simply Islamic law for Muslim societies, majority Muslim societies, what it's meant to be. It's not for our communities here. It's not for living in non-Muslim lands. These things are not applicable in non-Muslim lands. And more importantly, no one should take this in their own hands. It's not to be applied by individuals. It's to be applied by the courts, by the legal system, by the government, by the authority. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And there is for you in qisas life. There is for you in qisas life. O you people of understanding, that you may become righteous. So this first part, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. This is amazing rhetoric, amazing balagha. They said this is so powerful, so eloquent. Why? Number one, it's such a short expression. And there's so much meaning behind it. Number two, it's like in English, you can't translate it properly because by the time you say legal retribution, it loses the meaning. It's like in English, maybe closest is saying in capital punishment there is life, or in the death penalty there is life. So people will think, what? How can there be life in death penalty or death capital punishment? How can there be life? What is Allah? What does He mean? He means there is life in qisas because number one, it will prevent people from murdering. If you have capital punishment or execution of the murderer as an option, first of all, it will prevent and save many lives because the one intending to murder or kill will be deterred, number one. Number two, it will prevent many deaths through revenge by murdering other than the murderer. So in qisas, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, al-hurru bil-hurri wal-abdu bil-abdi wal-untha bil-untha, meaning the main gist of the message there is that only the person who is the murderer, the killer, only he can be punished, nobody else. So second way, qisas gives you life. It protects, saves many other lives. Number three, it prevents the cycle of revenge. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. In retribution, in qisas, there is life. How it prevents the cycle of revenge, one killing after another, then the family takes revenge, then the cousins take, it prevents all of that. And lastly, it will even prevent the death of the murderer. If the victim's family forgive him, it will prevent the death of even the killer and the murderer. So this is what is meant like وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. There is life in qisas. There is life for individuals. There is life for the relatives of the killer. There is life for the killer himself if the family forgive. There is life in the community. Lives are saved because revenge is not going to be taken. So this is the wisdom and the intent or the objective of having this punishment or these options of forgiveness as well. يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may protect yourselves or fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with respect to life and other people's lives. So in summary, the Sharia or Islamic law values life as one of the highest things to be protected. And it's comprehensive, it's not piecemeal. Sharia, Islamic law, is comprehensive in its nature. So piety and ibadah is not simply restricted to the masjid or at home. Not just salah, fasting, hajj and umrah. No, it's to do with community as well. It's to do with the laws that regulate society. This is an equal part of ibadah, equal part of Sharia. You cannot separate the two. And the duty of Muslims in Muslim majority societies is to live by the Sharia or live by the Qur'an. You can't separate personal ibadah and communal regulations and laws. And the justice and wisdom of Sharia. It's the balanced way, it's merciful. The options are there for forgiveness, but also it's equitable justice. If a person feels aggrieved and they want justice, then they have the right to order the punishment of the murderer or the killer. And its balance is equal. It's no more or less than what the killer did. It's perfectly, balance is perfectly equal. This is Qisas. And as we've seen with the encouragement of forgiveness or taking compensation, Sharia always encourages is to save lives. It's life affirming, it's life promoting, and it's life giving. Sharia does not promote bloodshed or violence or revenge or wanton killing. Sharia does not promote this. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, and these lessons are very, very pertinent and relevant to our communities today. Here, I'm not talking about the law of retribution, but the value of life. The warning against a believer who takes the life of another person intentionally, life of another believer intentionally, is severe. فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمْ. His reward is Jahannam, forever, to abide therein forever. So this is something very severe which our youth hardly know about. The people who are creating violence and havoc in some of the streets in our localities, taking life very lightly, taking the life of another person very lightly. Will kill someone over 20 pounds or 50 pounds of drugs, or kill somebody over a bad look or something they said or something they did. Very easily, young people are willing to take the life of another person. And we need to teach and instill the values of Sharia in terms of valuing life, and remind our youth the severe warnings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about intentionally taking the life of another person. Even if they're non-Muslim or Muslim, it's not just Muslim, but even non-Muslim, Muslim, it's all the same. We are prohibited strongly, strictly, to take the life of another person unjustly. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand His Qur'an and His wisdom and His laws. Inshallah, we'll continue next week from the next verses. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.